Marcus has a notes app with 47 business ideas. He's had it for 3 years. The oldest idea, a productivity app for developers, is genuinely good. He knows it's good because he's told 12 people about it, and all 12 said the same thing. You should actually build that. He hasn't written a single line of code for it. Every Sunday night, he opens the note, reads it, adds a thought, and closes it. And for about 4 minutes, he feels like a founder. That feeling is the problem. And if you've ever had a version of Marcus's Notes app, a journal full of plans, a vision board, a voice memo you recorded at 2 a.m. about completely changing your life, then what we're about to tell you is going to be uncomfortable, specific, and probably overdue. Your brain has been quietly sabotaging your ambition for years. Not because you're lazy, not because you don't care enough, not because the timing has never been quite right, but because your brain discovered a shortcut, a way to collect the emotional reward of success without doing any of the actual work required to earn it. And it has been taking that shortcut every single time you sit down to plan the life you're going to build someday. This is not a motivational failure. This is a neurological one. Today we're going to expose exactly how that shortcut works, why it feels so convincing, and what the science actually says is the only real way out. Stay with us, because by the end of this video, you'll understand something about your own mind that most people spend their entire lives never figuring out. Here is the most counterintuitive finding in modern motivational psychology. Thinking about your goal can make you less likely to achieve it. Not because thinking is bad, not because ambition is the problem, but because of what the act of imagining success does to your brain's reward circuitry. In research published in the Journal of Experimental Social Psychology, psychologist Gabrielle Oettingen showed that positive fantasy about future success reliably predicted lower energy, lower effort, and worse real-world outcomes. The participants who visualized their goals most vividly performed worst in actual follow-through. The mechanism is almost embarrassingly simple. When you imagine succeeding, your brain partially simulates the emotional experience of success. It releases a measurable dose of the satisfaction that should only arrive after the work is done. And once that satisfaction registers in your nervous system, the urgency to actually do anything quietly dissolves. Your brain has been paid in advance. It received the reward before the labor, and now it has no particular reason to demand the labor at all. Researchers call this mental simulation without implementation, and it is one of the most reliably documented traps in the psychology of high-potential, low-output people. The higher your dreams, the more vivid the simulation. The more vivid the simulation, the more completely it mimics the feeling of having actually done something. And so the cycle begins, not with laziness, but with a brain doing exactly what it was designed to do. Marcus understands this on a visceral level, even without the vocabulary for it. Sunday nights with the Notes app are not procrastination in the way most people use that word. They are a transaction. His brain collects just enough founder satisfaction from the ritual of reviewing the idea that it never builds sufficient pressure to demand the actual product. He is, neurologically speaking, living off the interest of a loan he never took out. And the particularly cruel part of this dynamic? The smarter you are, the more elaborate and convincing your mental simulations become. The more detail you can fill in, the product, the launch day, the first user, the revenue milestone, the more complete the simulation feels. And the more complete the simulation feels, the more thoroughly it pays off the psychological debt that should be driving you toward real action. Intelligence, in this specific context, is not an advantage. It is a more sophisticated trap. Now let's go deeper, because the fantasy loop is only the first layer. Chloe is 29, and she has been planning to launch her own consulting practice for 2 years. She has a business name, a color palette, a LinkedIn bio rewritten 11 times, and a pricing structure she built in a spreadsheet at midnight. What she does not have is a single client. When Chloe talks about her business, she sounds completely ready. But when she thinks about actually sending the first cold email to a potential client, something tightens in her chest, and she suddenly remembers something else she needs to finish first. There is always something else she needs to finish first. Psychology has a precise name for what Chloe is experiencing: self-handicapping avoidance. It is the behavioral pattern that emerges when a person's sense of self-worth is attached not to what they have done, but to what they might be capable of doing. As long as Chloe has not launched, her idea is still perfect. Her capabilities are still unproven. which means, in the most important sense, they are still unlimited. She could be extraordinary at this. She simply hasn't had to find out yet. The moment she sends that first email, she steps into the territory of actual evidence. And actual evidence has a way of contradicting the stories we need to believe about ourselves. So the planning phase does not end because it is not supposed to end. It is not a preparation stage. It is a protection strategy. And before we go any further, if this already feels uncomfortably familiar, stay with us. Because the next mechanism is the one most people never see coming. And Chloe, to her credit, did eventually send that first cold email. It bounced, wrong domain. She took it as a sign and spent the next 3 days redesigning the logo. Now here is where it gets genuinely uncomfortable. Because the third mechanism is the one that keeps even the most disciplined, most self-aware people permanently locked in place. It is called identity behavior incongruence, and it operates almost entirely below the level of conscious awareness. Your brain does not just hold goals. It holds a detailed model of who you are. And it will reliably resist any sustained behavior that conflicts with that model, regardless of how sincerely you want the outcome. Research by Wendy Wood and colleagues, published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, demonstrated that habitual behavior is governed primarily by context-dependent identity cues rather than conscious intention. In simpler terms, what you repeatedly do becomes, in your brain's accounting, who you are. And who your brain believes you are determines which actions feel natural, and which actions feel like performing a role you were never cast for. Here is the implication that most people are not prepared for. If you have spent 3 years being someone who plans intensely and executes rarely, your brain has categorized that pattern as your identity. Planning feels like home. Executing feels like trespassing in someone else's life. Every time you try to act, you are not just fighting resistance or distraction or a bad day. You are fighting your own brain's deeply held conviction about who you fundamentally are. And your brain is very, very good at winning that fight. David is 38, and he has been talking about writing a book for 6 years. He has a complete outline, 2 finished chapters, and has referenced the book in approximately 40 separate conversations. His wife stopped asking about it 18 months ago. What David experiences every time he opens the document and stares at Chapter 3 is not writer's block. It is identity friction. His entire professional self-concept is organized around being a startup founder, decisive, action-oriented, externally focused, fast. Writing requires the opposite of all of that. It requires being slow, uncertain, interior, and willing to produce something genuinely bad before producing anything good. That person does not match David's mental file on David. So his brain keeps surfacing legitimate-seeming reasons why today is not the right day. A meeting, an email, a decision that actually needs him right now. The book remains unfinished not because David lacks discipline, intelligence, or desire. It remains unfinished because completing it would require him to spend sustained time as a version of himself his nervous system has no record of. If this is starting to make sense, if David's Chapter 3 feels like your Chapter 3, hit subscribe, because we go this deep every single week. Meanwhile, Marcus opened his Notes app that same Sunday and added a brand new entry, a habit tracker app. He spent 45 minutes refining the concept. It felt extremely productive. Let's now talk about the fourth mechanism, the one that explains why this pattern persists even in people who have read every book on productivity, understand the psychology, and genuinely want to change. Sustained effort toward an uncertain outcome feels bad. Not metaphorically bad. Neurologically, biochemically, measurably bad. Psychologist Roy Baumeister's research on ego depletion proposed that self-regulation, pushing through resistance, making hard choices, maintaining focus against competing impulses, draws on a cognitive resource that depletes with use. The more decisions you make, the more resistance you override, the more depleted that resource becomes. And a brain running low on self-regulatory fuel does not choose the hard thing. It chooses the rewarding thing, which, for someone with an active imagination and 47 ideas in a Notes app, means it chooses the fantasy every time. This is why the pattern of high ambition and low output is so maddeningly stable across years and decades. It is not a character flaw that more willpower can fix. It is a system that replenishes itself every night and depletes itself by noon. James is 45, and he has been saying he will leave his CFO position and build something of his own for 9 years. His wife believed him for the first 4. His children have never known a version of their father who was not on the verge of making a move. Every year, the timing is almost right. Every year, something reasonable and legitimate makes this particular year not quite the one. What keeps James in a life he privately describes as a beautifully furnished cage? The money is part of it. The status is part of it. But the piece that Baumeister's work illuminates most clearly is this. James has been making high-stakes decisions under institutional pressure for 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, across 2 decades. By the time he sits down in the evening, the version of himself capable of voluntarily choosing risk and uncertainty has nothing left to give. He is not afraid to leap. He is empty of the cognitive fuel that leaping requires. So he pours a drink, sits with the television, and thinks about what he will do when conditions finally settle. Conditions do not settle. The cage was never locked. He simply never had the energy to test the door. Now we need to talk about something that has made every single one of these patterns dramatically more intense. And that is the world we are actually living in right now. We are in the age of AI, and for the first time in human history, the practical barrier to beginning something has essentially collapsed. You can produce a logo, a business plan, a landing page, a pitch deck, and a full content strategy in a single afternoon, and it will look professional because AI did most of the heavy lifting. This sounds like an extraordinary democratization of opportunity, and in certain real ways, it genuinely is. But here is what that shift has actually done to the psychological landscape of ambition. Before AI, the friction of starting served as a natural filter. Building something required pushing through real difficulty that most people were not willing to sustain. That friction was unpleasant, but it also separated the people who wanted to build from the people who just wanted to have built. AI has removed that friction almost entirely, which means it has also removed the filter. Today, everyone starts from the same place. The beginning is no longer the differentiator, which means the only thing that separates outcomes now happens after the beginning. In the second month, when the novelty is completely gone and the dopamine of the new project has fully evaporated. In the AI era, showing up consistently is the scarcest and most valuable skill in the entire economy of ambition. And the deep irony, the thing that should wake every dreamer up, is that AI can build your plan, but it cannot build your follow-through. And for Gen Z and Gen Alpha, this is not a minor challenge. It is the defining psychological battle of your generation. You came of age inside an attention economy engineered specifically to deliver dopamine stimulation at a pace no natural environment could ever match. Your brain's reward circuitry has been calibrated, through years of daily use, to expect constant novelty, instant feedback, and frictionless engagement. Real work delivers none of those things. Real work is slow, repetitive, and withholds feedback for days and weeks, and sometimes months at a time. When your nervous system has been trained on an algorithm that responds to your every preference in milliseconds, sitting with slow, unvalidated effort does not just feel hard. It feels wrong, like a signal that you should pivot, that something better is one scroll away. That feeling is not a signal. It is the addiction talking. Your brain is running software that was deliberately installed by platforms that profit from your attention and have zero interest in your execution. So what does the research say actually works? Not motivation. Motivation is a feeling, and feelings are weather. Not a better system, because systems require the discipline to use them. Not waiting until you feel ready. The research is clear. Readiness follows action. It does not precede it. Oettingen's own follow-up work identified the one intervention that consistently outperforms all others in producing real behavioral change. Implementation intentions paired with explicit obstacle acknowledgement. A method she developed called WOOP, wish, outcome, obstacle, plan. Not, I want to grow my business. But, if it is Tuesday at 7 a.m., then I open the document and work for 20 minutes. Not because I feel inspired, not because the timing is ideal, not because AI couldn't draft it faster, but because I committed to this action at this specific time regardless of how I feel. The brain needs the obstacle written into the plan before the moment of resistance arrives. Without friction built into the simulation always becomes the destination. The plan that does not name the enemy will always be defeated by the enemy. Here is the summary the science supports. Marcus is not lazy. His brain has been collecting founder dividends from a business that does not exist. Chloe is not unready. Her brain is protecting an identity that has never been tested against reality. David is not undisciplined. His brain is resisting a version of himself it has no prior record of. James is not waiting for the right moment. His brain arrives home each evening with nothing left for voluntary risk. And in 2026, all four of them have access to the exact same AI tools, the same information, and the same ability to produce a flawless-looking plan before launch. Which means the tools are no longer the advantage. The advantage, the only one that actually compounds over time, is the person who sits down when nothing feels exciting, when the algorithm is offering something easier, when the AI could theoretically do it faster and does the work anyway. That person has always been rare. In the age of AI, they are rarer than ever and more valuable than ever. And that is precisely who you are deciding to become, or not, in the small, unwitnessed moments of every ordinary day. If you saw yourself somewhere in this video, in Marcus's Sunday ritual, in Chloe's bounced email, in David's chapter 3, or in James's almost right timing, drop a comment below and tell us which one felt most like yours. Subscribe to the Behavior Matrix and hit the bell so you never miss a new video. We go this deep every single week. And if someone in your life is living inside a plan they have not started yet, share this with them. Not as a hint, as a gift.